Yes, the country is fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, and there are different ways for you to really look at the COVID-19 pandemic. You will see exactly what the effect on the economy has been, and you will see what have been the most affected industries and sectors of the economy. Well, we do know which ones those are, and this morning we're going to look at how they've been affected. But then the way in which we manage COVID-19 has also been a talking point for our economy. Now let's talk about the most affected areas and industries now, the bar and hotel industry. Now, it looks as if as we continue to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, it's going to become compulsory for the bars and restaurants now in the country to hire COVID-19 officials. Let me go back again. 2 months ago, the bar and restaurant owners in the country had petitioned the government to print out or come up with a COVID-19 code of conduct for drinking beer and alcohol in this establishment. Well, since we reopened the bars and restaurants, the government has not printed this code of conduct or has not even come up with it at all, if at all, not printing by itself. So now, well, you ask yourself the question, what code of conduct are these, I would say, state liaisons who are going to be in this restaurant going to see to or maintain if in reality that code of conduct has not yet been implemented? Now, according to the state, this is exactly what it is that they are supposed to do, and we're going to look at it step by step this morning. Now, according to the government, now officers are to restrict the number of people that are supposed to go into these bars and restaurants, and number two, they're supposed to close dance floors and reduce contact between staff and drinkers. Just make sure that everything is maintained according to what the state really wants on that. And number two, now bars will also be forced to display the signs to indicate that they have reached the maximum number of people needed in this sport. And alcohol manufacturers, we do know, petition the government to publish guidelines on the consumption of beer, but we are yet to see that. Now, we do know that these areas have been earmarked as one of the hot spots for infections in the country when it comes to COVID-19. It looks as if the government is trying to fumble with a way that is going to make sure that they actually see to these guidelines that they're putting in place. So the question is going to be, are they going to meet it? And if not, then what is going to happen? This morning, we asked you the question, do you think state liaisons, we're calling them COVID-19 officers, and which these clubs are going to hire, do you think they're going to be the magic bullet in terms of these sports or these drinking sports really maintaining the COVID-19 regulations which the government has yet to publish? Now, let's move from there and see exactly what the attorney is really telling us this morning. If you do know, last week we were treated to what is the economic recovery strategy for the country as we look to end the year and move forward to 2021. Now, under that, we did see the unemployment levy or tax that we might be forced to pay as of January henceforth, that is going to take care of the emergencies like what we've seen right now. Many of the people getting into temporarily unemployment that saw more than 1.82 million people lose their jobs as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, all the way from March up to where we are right now. Even as we wait now for the government to resume some of these tax measures that you and I are enjoying right now, talk of VAT, talk of pay. Now, the government is also saying, well, we have to continue managing the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this is exactly what the attorney has in place for us this morning before we look at exactly where we stand in terms of our economy as we come closer and closer towards the end of this year. Now, he's saying that it's going to appeal to rich foundations and trusts to help Kenya fund its COVID-19 response battle. All right. Now, in a Vogue paper, that's the COVID-19 economic recovery strategy, which you must have seen last week, Kenya saying that they're going to run to grants and cheaper credit at its cheaper loans again to finance Kenya's budget. Now, we do know that we're back in the market again for another COVID-19 loan from IMF, which we were given some of the conditions that we had to adhere to make sure that we have that money. Looks like the attorney is finding another way out to dig us out of this hole, and he's saying that we're going to go into free, cheaper credit or grants. All right. Now, that means that our Kenyan debt versus GDP, which stands at 68% right now, is also bound to expand further because we do know exactly what the economic performance indicators are right now, with the Treasury Office knowing, and I will tell you that number again this morning, reducing our economic recovery this year to just 0.6%. So that means that this morning we're again going to look into institutions like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Wellcome Trust, and Bloomberg Philanthropies, among others, as one of those areas that we're going to look to just to get at us of this economic burden that the COVID-19 pandemic has dug us into. Just before we will look at where we are in terms of our debt burden, and this is a conversation that will never ever stop. Let's look at what the attorney thinks of our economic recovery this year as we come towards the end of 2020. That's pretty much it. Well, that Ukuri attorney, and is a man who came to the office again promising you that this year you're going to see quite a recovery in terms of the way we're going to manage our debt, looks as if he's been pushed to the wall again in terms of his options just to get the country out of the economic hardships that the COVID-19 pandemic has pushed our country into. Now, he's saying that in 2021-2022, he's just targeting a budget deficit of 7.1% of GDP. If you remember, we were talking about something less than 3% when he came into our office, meaning that this is a man whose plan will continue changing unless he gives us that, what he's promising, reduce unnecessary expenditure and see to the reduction of the wage bill and a proper debt management. But is that really something that might happen? All right, let's look at our Kenya's external debt as of this morning, again on exactly at the backdrop of this promise, which if you look at that data, you're going to see again that it's on an upward trend again, all the way to where we are up to now, and you're going to see that by the close of this year, we are going to close the 7.5 trillion mark, which begs the question, how close are we to that debt ceiling in 2021 or 2022 if indeed our economy doesn't recover to the expected numbers that Ukuri attorney is mentioning there for you. Now let's also look at Kenya's external debt interest payments data that we have for you, because you will also see that, yes, always on a rise, and that's where the conversation point is, that even as we talk about managing our debt, we should also keep our debt interest payments on the low if that plan that we have for reducing our debt is actually therefore going to make sense at all for a career attorney in that office. Now, let's talk about what has been quite a year that you could say is COVID-19 pandemic stricken. Now, the banking or the financial services sector. Now, central bank data is showing us that, well, we did cross the 403 billion mark in terms of defaulted loans all the way up to where we are now. And they're saying that if we go back to March up to where we are right now, that is going to be a 53.95 shillings billion jump in that the defaulted loan book. And so let's look at where the rain started hitting us when it comes to defaulted loans in the economy. Let's go back and look at that data for you this morning, and you will see, wow, that if you go back to where we are right now in terms of that gross non-performing loans, you'll start to see that all the way from quarter one of 2017 up to where we are right now of quarter one and quarter two of 2020, you'll start to see that big jump right there. So as we close there, CBK is telling us that one of the most affected sectors and industries, or the biggest contributors to that NPL, would include real estate, energy and water, tourism, which we do know have been the worst affected again when it comes to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also one of the non-defensive sectors, because it looks as if people moved away from that. Which therefore begs the question, now we do know the CRB listing is back. Are we going to see the biggest number ever of the people who are in the CRB bad books for defaulting? And when is this going to change? And if so, what is the stability of the financial services sector?